Hello, welcome to Generational Ministries. I'm your host and author, Sandra Fitzgerald. Today, the subject of our short story is entitled The Beauty of a Woman. What defines beauty in a woman? Perhaps it's the length and style of her hair, the shape of her face, the texture of her skin, the shape of her lips, or the color of her eyes. Maybe it's the way she smiles or the way she holds her head. Perhaps her beauty is in the perfect symmetry of her body. Or maybe even it's her body language. Could it be her style of dress or the different expressions that flits across her face? Attraction could be found in the way she walks and carries herself. These are all ways to define beauty. However, in this lesson, we will be looking at a beauty of a different type. The beauty we are referring to is called inner beauty. Again, that's inner beauty. This is the beauty that God sees when He looks at us. This truth can be backed by a statement made in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. For man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks in the heart. This is a statement that was made referring to Eliab and David. However, it rings true for all of God's people. With this in mind, this lesson will be centered around the women of the Bible. Our emphasis will be on their contributions and character rather than their commonness or countenance. We will begin our story in the book of Judges with a lady named Deborah. We don't hear too much about Deborah, but Deborah's occupation was one of high priest. And even today, Deborah would stand out in a crowd. Many people would be kind of afraid of Deborah because Deborah was standing out in a man's world. If you haven't guessed by now, she was a judge of her people. Deborah's beauty lay in her wisdom and her strength of character. God obviously trusted Deborah's instincts, and not many women or men for that matter could have shouldered such a burden. We know from the scriptures that Deborah is a prophetess. In short, that simply meant that she heard from God and stood as an intercessor between Him and the people of Israel. We see her courage and complete assurance in her calling as she directs Barak in his campaign against Sisera. Not only did she prophesy victory, she went to the battle as encouragement to her people. Now that Deborah was something else. The next lady on our list may be found in the book of Ruth. In fact, Ruth is her name. Ruth's integrity and loyalty is what lands her in a top spot on our beauty list. Ruth is best known for her refusal to leave her mother-in-law, Naomi, during an incredible hard time of grief, sadness, and depression. Though both of them had suffered the loss of their husbands, and by the way, those were not the days to be without a man, Ruth finds a way to feed both herself and her mother-in-law. Ruth made a promise to Naomi that she would never leave her and that she would adapt herself to Naomi's people and her God. Ruth kept her promise. When she gleaned for food, she made sure the table was set for two. Eventually, Ruth goes on to marry Boaz, the owner of the field from which she gleaned. As you might have guessed it, Naomi not only engineered the wedding, she remained an integral part of Ruth's life as she married and had children by Boaz. Oh no, the judges must have misplaced the contestant. Rahab strolls out onto the stage. Wow, she was riding among the pages of the book in Joshua. Rahab is a little stage frightened, and frankly, she is surprised to be in this beauty contest. For you see, Rahab is, to put it delicately, a lady of the night. Nevertheless, Rahab shines among beauty queens because her beauty lies in her faith. Rahab's story began when she encountered two men, not of her usual clientele. These men were spies from the army of God. As they lay out their plans for the destruction of Jericho, Rahab strikes a deal with them in faith that kept her and her family alive after the city's destruction. Wow. As the contest moves forward, we will stop by the book of 1 Samuel and use our backstage pass to get an interview with a lady named Abigail. During the course of our interview, we learn that Abigail is a widow, but soon to be remarried. Her first husband, she states, was a reckless alcoholic by the name of Nabal. Apparently, Nabal died suddenly from what was probably a stroke brought on by terror as he learns of the warrior King David's plan to kill him and all in his household. David, by the way, is Abigail's intended. When asked what brought her to this contest, she replied, "King David was impressed by my kindness and hospitality and by my shrewdness in preventing him from doing a deed that he might later regret." As Abigail prepared for the contest, she encouraged us to read more about her and David in 1 Samuel verse 25. Cameras flash and reporters crowd around our next contestant. She is a force to be reckoned with. Not only is she absolutely stunning to look at, this young Jewish woman has a character that far outweighs her physical attributes. The sign on her name says Hadassah, but she is better known as Esther. Her autobiography may be found beside the book of Nehemiah. Esther is bought from her home to serve as one of the king's concubines. God sees fit to intervene, and she wins favor with the king and becomes his wife. As queen, Hadassah had no idea of a madman named Haman's plot to kill her uncle Mordecai and all of her people. After being made aware of this, Esther searches her soul and reaching a decision to intercede with the king for her people, even if it meant her death. Hadassah's selflessness is what lands her in this contest of beauty. As we travel to the book of Proverbs, we have a lady that is signed only as the virtuous woman. As we can't be sure that she was an actual woman, we'll give her an honorable mention in the category of what else? Virtue. She also exemplifies a diligent character, and she has a business brain as well, and she has her priorities straight. Check her out in Proverbs 31:10 through 31. She is something to be reckoned with and an example to all women of today and her time. The next lady can be found in the book of Matthew. Her beauty lies in her obedience to the will of God. Hers was no ordinary obedience. Her actions would leave her exposed to the world as an unwed mother. While this is somewhat common and more accepted today, in her time it would have been a cause to be put to death. Nevertheless, this lady obeyed with the words, "Be it unto me according to thy will." And to this day, her name is blessed among women. Her name is Mary, and she is the mother of Jesus. Let's travel to the book of Mark, chapter 12, verse 42. Here's a beauty queen who not only goes by the name Poor Widow. What makes her beautiful? Certainly not the clothes she's wearing. Just looking at her, we can't see one thing remarkable about her. As we look closer, we will see she's searching through her garments for something. As she is standing by the treasury, we come to the conclusion she is looking for her money. She comes up with only about 50 cents. What a puny offering. Surely she can do better than that. If that's all she had, she may as well have kept it. But she didn't keep it, and that's where her beauty lies. She gave all that she had. As we travel to the next dressing room, we notice a small amount of perfume in the air. As we knock at the door, curious now as to what kind of woman this is, many in our group gasp as she reveals herself as Mary Magdalene. Now this chick would have been holding some serious issues. Some of them were to be really amazing to this day. Some people calls her a harlot or a prostitute. But in my study of the Bible, I never read that. So if you have, please do not hesitate to contact the ministry and let us know. Mary begins her story. I was so sad and confused. My life had become too much for me to bear. I had been what some people said that I was. I don't remember when I'd been anything else. Instead of a woman of honor, I was a plaything among many. So many, in fact, their faces began to blur together, and there was no difference from one to the other. They were filthy, as was I. Time passed, and under all the makeup and scarlet clothes, I began to realize I was tired of being what I had become, and I desperately wanted to be free. And one day I heard about this man called Jesus. In desperation, I began to search for him. I found him at a Pharisee's house. I quickly bowed down to worship him. I had heard he forgave sins, and mine were many. I unbound my hair, uncaring that I was disgracing myself. I had nothing to lose. Tears rolled down my face as I bent and rubbed his feet with my hair, the only thing I had of value, and a small alabaster box of ointment. And with the hairs of my head and the tears from my eyes, I began to wash his feet. I used the ointment to rub on this precious man. How good I felt at the feet of Jesus. As I washed his feet, I felt his love washing over me. It was a pure love, not the kind of mess that I had become accustomed to. Bit by bit, he washes away the makeup from my face. He bathes away the filthy deposits of those that I had been with. He changes my scarlet dress to stunning white. And one by one, he gathers the pearls that I had so carelessly thrown at the feet of swine. He washes me as I wash him. No longer am I the property of the street. I belong to him alone. Now you understand my presence here in this contest. I'm not beautiful because men say so. I am beautiful because Jesus said so. And by the way, that perfume you smell is a souvenir of a piece of pottery from my time spent with Jesus. We all look a little bit sheepish as we realize Mary had the answer to what makes women beautiful. It's not about a physical beauty. It's all about what God sees when he looks at us through the eyes of Jesus. Wow. That was one of my favorite stories. It's not that long, but it does say what many women need to hear. That, time passes for us all. And, we might have been a little more stunning in our youth. But that's not what's important. What's important is what God sees when he looks at us. And God can only see us through his son Jesus. And once he does that, no matter what your past is, no matter what you did become, no matter what you have made of yourself, no matter who you slept with, No matter what you drank or smoked or what you did, God sees you and me through the eyes of His Son Jesus. And once He sees us through Jesus, we are all extremely beautiful and precious in the eyes of our Father. Thank you for listening to this short story, and I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Thank you.